Looks like we have a quorum, so I think we'll get started. Good evening. This is Kevin Butel, a member of the Lexington Conservation Commission. I will be chairing tonight's meeting. Let me first confirm that we have a quorum and that all commissioners and staff members who are present can hear me. Members of the commission, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Alex Doan?
Yes.
Jason Notko?
Yes.
Holly Samuels?
Yes.
Great. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Megan McNamara?
Yes.
Amber Carr?
Yes.
Karen Mullins?
Yes.
Okay. This evening's meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely by Zoom video conferencing. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting webinar from their computer or tablet by clicking on the link provided with the meeting agenda. This meeting is being broadcast live on LexMedia and recorded for future on-demand viewing. Accordingly, please be aware that other participants or viewers may be able to see and hear you, and that anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. If you're joining us in the audience and you have an electronic device of any type, I ask you to keep it muted, as it will otherwise interfere with our microphones. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's public Viewpoint Cloud portal. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Now we are ready to turn to the first part of our agenda, entitled New Business Pending Matters. This part of the agenda does not involve formal hearings and is scheduled for the time period between 6:30 and 7 o'clock. There is ordinarily no opportunity for public participation in the discussion of these items. At 7 o'clock or shortly thereafter, we start the hearings, which do involve opportunities for participation by the public. At that time, I'll explain how to participate. All right, and looking at our agenda, the first item is a breakdown of Willards Woods Meadow Preservation and ADA Improvement Design and Engineering, presented by Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture.
Thank you. This is Tracy Hudak with Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture. Is there an opportunity to share a screen, or do you guys put up that presentation?
You can share your screen or we can put it up. Which would you prefer?
Oh, it was disabled. I've got it. Thank you. Great. So we just wanted to be here to give you a update on our work so far at Willards Woods. The agenda for tonight, we just want to quickly introduce the project team, let you know about the overview of the project itself and where we are. We'll look at some of the existing conditions on site that we have been examining, report back on stakeholder feedback that we have received so far, and then also discuss some of the trail options and major decision points so that we can move the design forward and follow up with next steps. So the project team, two of the staff members for the Conservation Commission, Amber Carr and Karen Mullins. And then we have Kyle Zick, principal of Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture, and myself, Tracy Hudak, the project landscape architect. So just so everyone knows where we are, Willards Woods, the 107-acre largest conservation area under Lexington's control. So we have North Street, kind of the entrance at that location up on the upper right, and then Brent Road at the bottom of the page, and also Hathaway Road, which we'll also be talking about sort of middle bottom left. And just so folks are oriented, that is the site. To go over the project scope, essentially what Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture has been charged with is coming up with a design plan for a universal access trail or trails and parking accommodations with that. So what we're going to be what we've started examining and we're going to be continuing over the next several months, the proposed trail route or routes that we are looking at, infrastructure improvements, so trail improvements in terms of site furnishings, signage, kiosks, that sort of thing. We'll also be looking at and providing suggestions on invasive species management along the trail route, although not for the entire Willard Woods itself. We're going to be looking at sustainability, both in terms of material choice and longevity, but also ease of maintenance. We're going to look at parking options for the improved trails, and then also developing cost estimates so that there can be budgeting and planning moving forward for construction. Project also includes delineating the wetlands along the trail routes that we have been looking at, and then also completing a complete land survey of the entire property, which is ongoing right now and should be wrapping up in the next week or so. In terms of the draft schedule, we've been out on the site since mid-May and evaluating options for trail routes and mapping wetlands, looking at the slopes and seeing where we thought we could make accessible routes. In mid-June, we held an evening charrette that was followed by about a month of offline comment period. And so much of the comments that I talk about this evening are going to be ones we received during that comment period. We also had a stakeholder check-in last week. And in the box, that's where we are right now, the initial presentation to the Conservation Commission. We'll have another stakeholder check-in following this meeting. We plan another charrette, and ultimately we will come back to the Commission with a final design where we would expect a vote on moving forward with construction documents for that design. And so we have started work on the design proposal, but that will again continue all the way through until Conservation Commission approval. So in the bottom right, we're going to just do a little walkthrough of the site quickly, just to make sure everyone's sort of aware of the site conditions out there. So the pink dot is sort of follow the pink dot, and that is essentially where we are on the site where we're talking about. So we'll start at the North Street entrance, where the entrance is a bit rutted. The parking area is unmarked and could probably be laid out a bit more efficiently. There also is no accessible parking there. And as you see in the bottom left, the start of the trail is rather rocky. And then you move directly into a very narrow trail through a meadow. Just above the orientation map, there is the camping area, which is used by scouts, but also other folks, where there are a couple picnic tables and 2 fire pits, but again, not a currently accessible area. We did look a bit at the area just north of the camping site, primarily because during the charrette in mid-June, we heard that people were interested in having us explore this area as a potential location for expanding the universal access trail. And in here, you've got some pretty dense woods, some mild to moderate slopes, and a number of stone walls, which would be sort of impediments to putting a trail through that location. But its proximity to the North Street parking area does make it an attractive location for a potential trail. Just south of the scout area are a series of meadows. There's both wet meadows and then upland meadows. And so these have been delineated, pardon me, these have been delineated as part of the wetland delineation of the site. And so this is another location through which we're exploring the idea of a accessible trail. Through the wetlands, anything that would occur through the wetlands would need to be boardwalk as opposed to on the ground trail. The existing mill pond, we found was one of the more attractive features of the site, and there is sort of a beaten dirt trail around it at present. During the feedback from the charrette, people were very supportive of using the mill pond as part of the universal access trail and agreed that it was sort of one of the highlights of the property. We did also discuss the idea of fencing, and although a number of people were sort of disappointed with the idea of having to fence the mill pond, it generally seems that people felt that the fencing was needed given the damage that had occurred to the site prior to the current fence from primarily dogs, but also people sort of wandering where they were not intended to go. If you circle back around the pond, you come back to the what was more recently a bike path, but prior to that was a cart path. So it has both sort of historic and aesthetic value, and people were very interested in keeping the stone walls intact along this pathway. And what is nice about it is it had sort of a range of mixed forest, pine forest, open meadow. So it's a nice kind of transect of environments for one to experience. So we also explored this as an option for the universal access trail. As you come to the end of that, you'll find yourself at the top left at the bridge that was put in place able to withstand fire vehicles. So it's sort of this large bridge. And then right after that is the entrance to Brent Road. So you'll see there's some overhanging vegetation alongside the road where people park. Vegetation also is kind of taking over. For example, there's an existing fire hydrant there that is starting to disappear into the woods. But this was one access point that we examined during our investigation. If after the end of the fire bridge, you actually turned to your right instead of going straight, you would find yourself on the way to the Hathaway Road entrance, where there's very sort of narrow swath of Willard's Woods that goes between two private lots. And so that route is a bit shadier, rockier, and a bit more narrow. Along Hathaway Road, there's been some what seems to be sort of just incidental parking that people are doing kind of right next to the entrance alongside the parkway. So they sort of made their own parallel parking locations there. So those are the existing conditions for the different areas that we explored for use as a universal access trail. So what we'll talk about next are sort of three concepts that we've developed that we would, that we're looking for some Conservation Commission feedback on for your impressions on these particular concepts. First, though, we have these public comments. So I want to just summarize, although we've mentioned some of it, summarize what we heard again at the June 14th charrette, and then the sort of month-long comment period that followed that. So people are very concerned that the trail surfacing blend into the site and are not interested at all in anything such as asphalt or those types of surfaces. There was also, as I mentioned, support for the mill pond as part of the trail. I already discussed that this item here on fencing around the pond. Unfortunate but necessary seems to be the general consensus. The stone walls, again, important aesthetically and historically to the folks that we heard from. We also heard that the former bike path, depending on the weather, some sections are rather challenging to navigate in terms of being muddy, slippery, or icy. So that is something we would have to consider. And then also that the commenters wanted more options explored than what the previous consultant had suggested in the 2021 concept plan. A number of folks also noted that sort of the dog policies and the on-leash, off-leash policies, and how much people adhere to these have a big impact on their feelings of safety and security in the park, and also on the resource of Willard Woods itself. From a number of people, there was a concern that there's already a large volume of traffic and a number of cars parking on Brent Road, largely based on time of day, and seem to be tied primarily to dog walkers. Tied to that, there's also a concern that if we institute any sort of formal parking on the residential streets, even if it's simply limited to ADA spaces, that would bring additional traffic that was undesirable to those folks. ADA parking was suggested, again, at Hathaway Road connection, primarily because that is a dead-end street. A number of respondents also asked whether looking at small loops would be a better experience for a universal access trail than a long extended trail. There was also questions about whether there was data from the town to support the need for a universal access trail here. And finally, people were interested in adding interpretive signage to any universal access trail that we would create, whether that would be related to history or something with the environment. Both were suggested as valuable additions to a trail. So here was the original concept design from 2021, done by the previous consultant. And so from North Road, there's a yellow dashed line that indicates where they had proposed the universally accessible trail loops. And then the tan dashed line was where they were suggesting a universal access trail extension could be made. And so that is where we started when we started our explorations, and then we kind of expanded out from that. So right now what we're looking at are a number of, again, conceptual designs where we're exploring sort of different lengths of trail and different trail start and end points. So on this map, essentially what you'll see, we keep the restoration and improved entry drive and parking area at North Street consistent with them all. We feel that's an important element that should be included in all of the concepts. Beyond that, there's a fat dashed line that indicates where we are proposing a universal access trail. And then there's also on here a pink dash dash line that indicates where we have delineated wetlands on the site. So in this first concept, essentially it takes and it improves the trail, moving from North Street, then including the fire pit area, and then creating a short new trail down to meet existing trails that currently move through the upland meadow area. Then taking a shortcut through the upland meadow and going around the mill pond. So in this case, there's very short amounts of new trail that would be created, none within a wetland. However, this does mean that only a small amount of the park itself is made into a universal access trail. And then also that only a limited number of natural communities are really explored. So it's primarily just open field, upland meadow, and then the mill pond itself. This concept also does not address multimodal circulation, which was part of the original intent of the project. So from here, we'll look at Conceptual Design B, which expands on that, and again makes an additional loop through the area north of the camping site, and then also adds another loop down into the wet meadow. So it introduces both a new forest environment and also a wet meadow environment. And again, that would need to be a boardwalk, the area that cuts through into the wet meadow itself. So it has the benefit of adding a number of natural communities, but again, sort of restricts all of the universal access trails to one side of the site and still does not address the multimodal circulation issue. The final conceptual design that we wanted to talk to you about essentially does an expansion where we take the historic cart path and reimagine it into modern use, where it is both an accessible use trail and also a shared use trail. Now, in terms of who shares that trail, you know, that is something that's up for debate, whether it's bicycles, or, you know, it's the full range. It's bicycles, it's walkers, it's hikers, it's universal access, or it's some limited subset of potential users. So this scheme does address the multimodal circulation, but with that can also come conflicts between users. So that is something we want to explore, you know, how best to achieve that. This also does require construction of, you know, new trail segments where they did not exist before, at least in terms of the area through the wet meadows, so the boardwalk again. And then we also have introduced in this scheme parking along Brent Road and or Hathaway Road. And the extent to which that parking is simply ADA spaces, or whether it is more general use parking, or whether it's no parking at all, is also something that we'd like to explore. So the next step for us is to complete the property survey towards the end of this month, continue with design development based on feedback from you all here, and then also start work on cost estimates to get an understanding of sort of budgeting and future planning.
All right, thank you. Are there comments, questions from the commissioners? All right, while they're thinking of their comments or questions, I think, you know, my personal preference as far as the pathways, if cost is no object, is certainly, I think, you know, more accessible trails and a multimodal trail would be my preference. I think some of it may come down to, you know, what kind of materials do we think are most appropriate for both types of pathways? And, you know, what do people think of those? And are those the types of, you know, pathway materials that we're comfortable expanding pretty significantly through the park or not? Is that something that you guys have spent any time thinking about, is what types of path materials might be appropriate, or is that something that you need to dive into a little bit more later?
I mean, I think we are certainly on board with, what we would be doing is probably looking at natural materials and then looking at how to make those have the longevity that's needed for a public site.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was nice, just your intent to try to bring people to a number of different types of landscapes within the park, which I think will make a more interesting, you know, experiential, a better experience. People walk along, you know, those trails a little bit more interesting and varied, for sure. Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Jason. I just want to echo what Kevin said. I think this was a great presentation. I think there's some great work being done to improve this park, and I think we're encouraged to see this, and we'll support what you decide to do within our regulations.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to say, I did see the comment that raised a question about if this was an appropriate place for universal access. And I'd just like to say that, of course it is. The more places we can make universally accessible, the more people can enjoy those places. And so even if nobody's asked why we haven't done it here, that doesn't mean we shouldn't, that we should go ahead and do it, and go along with the if you build it, they will come principle. And yes, this has been an impressive presentation. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Holly?
Thank you. I also like that option C, but I also like the diversity in option B, because I noticed that you dropped off that upland forested trail from the option C. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think I'm interested to hear what the public thinks about this, the cart path, and not that upland trail that's in B. Whether it's more valuable to have one long stretch or more diversity in the terrain. So I'm interested to hear what people will think about that. But thank you for the presentation.
So for that multimodal trail, where does that terminate now at the North Street end? Because I see in this diagram here that it doesn't carry through all the way. When bikers use that, where do they enter from the North Street side?
It does go all the way to North Street.
Okay. So would the intent be that this would go to North Street too? Is that what the arrow's indicating?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And then, as far as parking goes, I know there's a lot of questions and concerns, particularly with the neighbors about parking. And so I think, we're going to have more discussions about this where we can get more of their feedback. But I think something to think about is, right now, Brent Road at the very least, there is already parking, not officially sanctioned parking, but there is that parallel parking along the street. So I don't know if that's something we could think about too. Is there a way to discourage the current kind of parking situation? Do we put in a couple of accessible spaces, but do something to prevent the parallel parking? Is that something that the neighbors would be interested in considering? So anyway, I think there's a little bit more nuance that I guess I'm trying to say in my opinion, whether it's, parking or no parking, because right now there is that volunteer parking that's happening. So I think getting to that a little bit more detail would be helpful.
Well, one thing I would add is we've met with stakeholders and the neighbors have provided a lot of feedback, and they feel very strongly not to have parking here. And they question if there's a conflict between dog use and universal access trails in this area. So I just wanted to convey that because I think they were hoping that there would be more direction tonight versus in the future.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking that by doing nothing, we're sort of allowing parking, the existing situation allows parking. So that's, something to be considered. And I know that, while the dog issues aren't kind of, directly related to, the scope of this work, that it clearly is an important part of the people visiting the park. And I know that's something that, as the commission, we've identified as something that we need to talk about because it seems like, there are definitely some issues there that we need to try to work through to see what we can do to make the situation better. And like we discussed in the presentation earlier, there are going to be several more opportunities for public input in the design process. So we're just at the very beginning, and that we're still going to be reaching out and talking to the neighbors and everybody else in town about these improvements. Did any of the commission members have any, since it came up as a specific issue, does anybody have any thoughts at this time about any of the parking issues based on the presentation tonight? Yeah, I guess, I'd like to understand it a little bit more, but it certainly seems like we do have a large parking lot off of North Street. And I think, maintaining, the access point at Brent Road and Hathaway are important, but whether or not there is formal parking at Brent Road and Hathaway, I haven't heard anything to make me think that those are, required necessarily. So, I'm open to considering, no official parking at those entrances myself. Okay. Any other questions for us before we move on to the next item on the agenda?
There was just one other, I think, the question of fencing around the mill pond was discussed quite a bit, and there was a lot of, on both sides, you know, the fact that a fence is needed to keep dogs out, but a
Yeah.
fence also detracts from the view. So I don't know if you all had any comments or thoughts on that yet.
I guess, I'll open up to the commissioners, but just first, my view, as long as you're walking along the trail, if you've got kind of clear views to the pond, I think a fence makes sense to me, given the current, or what I understand to be the current situation with dogs that are off leash here, or not under, as much control as they ideally could be or should be. And maybe we could think about it and do it in such a way where we've got the flexibility. So if we decide to go with a fence initially, and if we decide that the fence is no longer needed, we can relatively easily take it out, or potentially vice versa. If we feel like, maybe we can make this work without the fence, and we find out that that's not the case, do things in such a way where it could be added in relatively easily later. But my personal thought now is it's probably better to put the fence in based on, my current understanding. Anybody else have any thoughts on pond fencing? Holly?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm thinking about Fresh Pond and how when you walk around Fresh Pond, you still have a lovely view of the pond, but it is fenced as a public water supply. So I think maintaining the environmental integrity of this pond is important for me, for it as a conservation area. So I would be happy to see it fenced.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I see it is just after 7 o'clock, but wanted to ask Karen, are there people in the audience that are waiting? Is there something else we should be doing in the new business pending matters before we move on to the hearings?
Sure. Well, we have Amber with us tonight. So I figured if you could at least do the West Farm Conservation Area.
Sure.
Maybe
So
a
we'll
quick
address that.
discussion
Yep,
on
and
the
then-
memorials, and just a quick on the Lupa, if we could do those, so she wasn't planning to stay for the whole meeting.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Thank you, Karen. Okay, so next on the agenda is a discussion on herbicide use at West Farm Conservation Area as it pertains to the RFQ for field preservation.
Yes, so you should have received the overview of that project in your packets. And basically, what I would envision have happen on that property would be targeted use of herbicide to apply when plants are smaller in height, so less herbicide is used, trying to reduce the total amount on the property. But as you can see from the photos, there is pretty dense populations of sumac, which is a native on site, swallowwort, black locust, and tree of heaven as well. So it would be a large application, and I just wanted to get feedback from the commission on how you felt about that, considering that our management thought currently is to mow first and then apply herbicide to the regrowth.
Anyone have any thoughts or comments on that? Holly?
I have a question about the sumac and whether the other species are entangled with the sumac. So for instance, is black swallowwort where the sumac is growing? That's what
So not really. And so in the packets, there's this map that kind of shows the areas where each species is. And that upper field on the far end of Oak Street has black swallowwort. The lower field where the URI research station has black swallowwort, but then the sumac is kind of growing in the clump just adjacent to that, but they're not really intermixing too much to my knowledge. And then black locust is kind of in that backfield. And Stephen did send me a photo of Tree of Heaven today, and I don't remember exactly where he said it was, but it seemed like it was more of an early detection species for that specific location.
Yeah. I think that people are concerned about the sumac encroaching in the meadow, and I think that I would rather see the sumac mowed and the others treated, particularly the black swallowwort. The tree of heaven can be spot treated and cut and painted. And I don't know about black locust being, I don't know much about black locust and how much of a problem it is.
So black locust has that colonizing root system, just like sumac. So it's going to send out root suckers every time it's mowed. So ideally, herbicide should be used to some capacity for management if you really wanted to target that growth in the mowed area. Otherwise, it's just going to keep coming back. The other option that Karen and I discussed would be more of like a brush hogging. So you're actually destroying the root system and starting over, but because of the slope and the quantity of those populations on site, we were concerned about soil erosion. So we would have to do it more like a patchwork quilt kind of approach, and it would take a lot more time. So if we mowed, did herbicide, and then did scarification in select areas, we thought that might be a best first approach anyway.
That sounds like a good plan. Yeah.
Great. And it would ultimately be up to the consultant as far as what herbicide is used, but I would express preference for something like a triclopyr that wouldn't affect any monocots, so none of the grasses would be affected by the treatment.
That sounds good.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm always so torn with this invasive stuff because I hate using any herbicides. There's even the targeted ones, I feel like they're just not good to get into the environment. So I just wanted to state that. But that being said, Amber, I know you probably are mostly along the same lines as that, and we'll do the best you can to keep any herbicide use to a minimum while we keep working to figure out what to do about the invasives. So I appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
I had a question about the sumac. How much have they encroached on the meadow? Because I agree with Holly that my preference would be for mowing. I just don't know if we feel like they need kind of a good whack to kind of reestablish, you know, kind of a previous edge line, or if you think just mowing might be adequate. It seems like the kind of thing where maybe every, 10 years or so, you might need to kind of knock it back because the mowing is still going to kind of creep,
Right. So can everyone see what I'm drawing here? That little purple circle?
Yep.
So that's essentially where the sumac is located. Black locust is in this back field. And then there's another patch of sumac, I think up here in that front far field on Oak Street. And basically this site gets mowed once a year. So every late October, early November, DPW does mow it. And this is what we're seeing. So one mow a year isn't enough. And when I looked online, it suggests mowing twice during the peak growth to kind of exhaust the resources that are available in that root system. So mid-July, mid-August. And you basically have to continue that, and then one at the end of the year, and you basically have to continue that for longer if you didn't use herbicide. So we have, I think, around 20K or something for the meadow restoration for this site. So that money wouldn't go as far if we did not use herbicide. However, if the commission felt strongly about that, we could see how far it got us. But if we mow, I'm having DPW mow next weekend, and then late August this year, and then ideally hire a consultant to do an herbicide application this fall, and then have them do the whole management picking up in 2023. And that's just because DPW is busy in the summer, so they, try to fit this into their schedule, but it gets delayed. So if we want to prioritize management for the site, we would have to hire an outside contractor to do all of the work, and it's more expensive, and our money wouldn't go as far than if we tried to utilize DPW. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I don't know, Holly, so what do you think about the sumac and the herbicide now? Does that make you think at all differently about it?
Well, when you're working on this scale, I think it's really difficult to do anything without herbicide, unfortunately, when resources are limited, financial resources are limited.
I mean, Amber, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but when would you, so if we went with this kind of herbicide treatment like you were proposing, about how long would it be, would you guess, before we might need to kind of do the same thing again, where just sort of the annual mowing wouldn't cut it? Are we looking at like a 10-year time frame roughly, or do you have a sense of that? I'm just sort of wondering, like, how often do we think we need to go out here with herbicides if we want to continue the same kind of meadow preservation program?
Yeah, and I would be guessing. So what I can tell you is that black locust and sumac are both colonizing species. So whenever you mow, they're going to root sucker. Whenever you apply herbicide, that also means that it's going to be absorbed into the root system, regardless of whether or not individual plant was targeted. And so you're going to affect that whole system regarding whatever type of management you end up choosing. If you do mow only, it will take longer. If you do 2 to 3 years of herbicide, but then do supplemental mowing mid-year, you might get 15, 20 years out of it. But I don't know, Karen might have a better idea as far as, when this property looked the way we wanted it to look and how long it took for it to change into something that was less desirable. But I'm just not sure on how long it took to get to where we are today, I guess.
Yeah, does it do, I guess, and maybe to help clarify, I'm just trying to understand, if we think about this long term, if we're sort of planning this out over the next 30 years, I think I would just be in favor. I don't object to the use of herbicides, but I would just like some sort of system or process that uses them, the least amount that we feel they need to be. So, I just don't want to use them any more than we feel is really necessary. I think it's important to keep these meadows as meadows, which is not going to happen if we don't actively manage them, but just don't want to use any more than we think. So, if you guys think that this is what makes sense kind of long term, the same sort of program, then, I certainly don't have any objections to it.
Yeah, and again, I think that when I did do research, most of the information I found was out west. So I think our situation is going to be a little bit different than what I was able to find online. So if the commission felt strongly to see what happens next year without the application of herbicide this fall, and just hire a consultant to mow and see if there's enough reduction that way, we can explore that. But it would be,
I was thinking maybe the other way, where maybe we use the herbicide and kind of see how that goes, and we just sort of keep an eye on it and think, and this might inform, other properties as well. So I think that would be fine with me. Any of the other commissioners object to that approach?
That's fine with me. I'm also aware that these species are probably in the periphery of the field, and so there's a good likelihood that they'll return. And so managing invasives never ends. So we have to be realistic that that it's not going to be a one-time application, herbicide application.
Yeah. Okay. Does that give you the direction you need, Amber?
yes, at this time, I can always come back if I have future questions, if management doesn't turn out the way I hoped, but that puts me in the right direction. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to the next item, discussion on the draft policy for memorials and conservation land.
So we just get a lot of requests to put in memorial benches, and I had looked through the files and found something that my predecessor had pulled together, I think in 2016. And so just wanted to revisit that thought so that I can provide a little bit more structured guidance as far as what the commission wants to see. Currently, just to refresh your memory, you've approved various stone benches to be installed. I don't believe any wooden benches have been installed and no metal benches. So, but we do get a lot of requests for, at least lately, we have about like 5 different people asking about putting in a memorial bench, like at the present moment. So there's a lot of discussion about it. And I think the select board has an official policy in place, which people are familiar with. So they're kind of expecting something similar to have been established with the Conservation Commission as well.
I read through it and I didn't have any comments. I thought it looked pretty complete to me. Gave some pretty specific direction, but also gave us some flexibility. You know, they gave the commission some flexibility. So I was happy with the language. I don't know if the other commissioners had an opportunity to review it, and if they had any comments or concerns. I think maybe because we're a little short, this might be the kind of thing, maybe we, vote on it at the next hearing when we've got some more members here. It would also give everybody another chance, me included, to reread it and just make sure that we don't have any other comments, but certainly no major issues as far as I was concerned. Anybody else have any thoughts? Holly?
I had, in reading it, was looking at, I'm trying to find it now. Oh yeah, in the second paragraph. So there's people interested in creating a memorial will work with a designee from the Lexington Conservation Commission. And I don't know, is that a member of the commission? Is that a staff person?
I assumed it was staff.
Is that?
Yeah, I think that just is trying to say that it's up to you to decide who represents your thoughts on this. So if you want to be a staff member, we can leave it with that phrase, or we can just put staff in directly so that it's clear that staff will be the contact person.
That might be more clear. And then the other thing was, I was a little surprised, and I didn't know this, on the next paragraph down, where who's ever going to do a memorial is responsible for all costs, and then has to make a donation to the Lexington Nature Trust. So has that always been in place, or is that something new?
So I think that specific paragraph was taken from like the Brewster Conservation Trust, which this protocol was edited from. And I think that intention is, yes, all costs for purchasing installation are the responsibility of the person making the donation. But then if there's any maintenance costs in the future, for instance, if you did allow wood, eventually it would need to be replaced, or if a stone bench had like sunken in or something and needed to be moved to a new area, we would have funding available to make that happen if needed or as needed.
So I think it would be nice to say that in that paragraph for any future maintenance.
Sure.
Karen?
I just wanted to let the commission know that the select board's policy also requires that a person pays for their memorial bench. And also part of the fund does include money for long-term maintenance. So it wouldn't be different than what's happening in town with other memorials.
Yeah, that's good. I think it makes sense. It just doesn't sound, I think
Good
it should be more explicit what the donation is for. That's all.
Perfect.
It also looked to me like reading between the lines a little bit that once the funding kind of runs out, if there was any issues, then that also gives us the option to not, maintain or replace something. So these things we're not obligated to keep them on site indefinitely. So, so 500 years from now, we don't have, something that looks like a cemetery with memorials peppered throughout our open spaces, which I know in some city parks can get a little out of control. Okay, great.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Amber. All right, with that, I think we will move over to the hearings. We've now come to this evening's hearings. Before we begin, let me cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. For each agenda item, I will open any new meeting or hearing. The presenter or speaker will then introduce himself or herself. After they conclude their remarks, I will ask the commissioners and associate members for their questions or comments, recognizing each by name for the record. I ask them to raise their hands and not to speak until recognized by the chair. After the commissioners have finished questioning the applicant, I will invite public comment as follows. I will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to raise their hands in the chat view or press *9 on your phone. I will call on each by name in the order received. When recognized, you must identify yourself for the record and give your address and/or affiliation. Each person will be afforded up to 3 minutes for any question or comment. Please wait until your name is called, then unmute yourself and take care to speak loudly and clearly so the microphone associated with the webcam can effectively broadcast your comments to those participating remotely. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All right, the first hearing we have is a notice of intent for 501 Merritt Road. Applicant is the town of Lexington. The project is to construct a new 20-foot by 26-foot bathhouse with accompanying utilities. To install a 20 by 20 beach canopy, remove existing ADA matting, installed proposed path and proposed ADA matting, portions of which are within inland bank, bordering vegetated wetlands, 100-foot buffer to bordering vegetated wetlands, and land under water bodies and waterways.
Good evening. For the record, Brian Gaudreau with Hancock Associates. So I'm here on behalf of the town on DPW for the bathhouse improvements at the reservoir. Pretty small scope. What is proposed is there's a 20 by 26 precast concrete structure to be placed essentially where the gravel driveway is right now at the fencing line that surrounds the reservoir and the beach. As a part of this bathhouse improvement, there's going to be a new ADA pathway, ADA matting, which is essentially a pervious kind of carpet, if you will, to be laid down to the beach and into the water. If you look at the plan, there's a little bit of contouring, and that contouring is limited to kind of regrading the sand heading down to the water to maintain an ADA accessible slope. So there's maximum and minimum slopes that we can have to adhere to those regulations, and this is what we're showing. There is a small dashed rectangle off to the left of the pathway to the water, and that's going to be a canopy. There's an existing canopy with 4 posts and kind of a canvas cloth. It's going to be substantially similar, just a little bit bigger. Additionally, there's going to be some utility work that takes place outside the fencing line. There's a water line and a sewer line that run from the existing building down towards the school. That's going to be relocated and then obviously connected to the new bathhouse building. Stormwater management has been fully designed to take the roof runoff and the walkway surrounding the building and to be able to attenuate and infiltrate it into the ground. And there's a small kind of crushed stone infiltration area earmarked to the southwest of the proposed building. We were at a site walk last week. Thank you for everyone who could attend to that. We did have a couple of questions, but more notably, following that site walk, there was a town engineering comment letter that had 2 really items to address. One was the type of wattle that's being proposed. We had proposed straw, and it was requested to shift that to mulch. And then it had to do with the actual drainage calculations. We had to tweak our model to basically expand the snapshot of how we're showing the rain event, if you will, to capture the beginning and the end of the storm, and then also run it for a 1-year event. It was requested that we provide test bed data. We are requesting it be confirmatory. We're confident that in the material we're going to find out there is going to be representative of the fact that it is a reservoir, it's going to be sandy, it's going to be a static groundwater elevation, and with that assumption, that's how we made the design. There is a geotechnical engineer that is on board with the project. Borings need to be conducted for a part of the foundation engineering before this goes out to bid, and we're anticipating piggybacking on that geotechnical investigation to dig a hole in the ground kind of adjacent to the building where we're proposing the infiltration structure to confirm that groundwater elevation. So we would just look for that to be conditioned. With that, I know it's a kind of a small scope project and that was a high level review, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any members of the commission have comments or questions? Jason?
Yeah, so I think one question we had at the site visit is how the path is going to wrap around the bathhouse. Is that, I guess it would be to the downward direction. I don't know where north is on this figure, but on the bottom of the page, it wraps around the bathhouse.
Yeah, let me see if I can annotate this real
Like where the
quick.
water line is that where the path goes?
So the water line is down here, and the fence, if we're talking about the fence, is currently right there. So essentially, the bathhouse sits at the face of the fencing that's there. The walkway that goes around is going to have two gates on either side. So the fence ties into the building in those locations to secure the beach as it is right now.
No, I'm talking about the path to walk around it. So if you're walking around the area, does that path extend that way?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And so because of that path, is that why we have to take down those trees that are kind of on that slope? I see 2 trees to be removed.
It's going to be a combination of the pathway and the utilities that are out there. So right now we have sewer, water, and electric that physically go underneath this footprint, and we need to relocate those to the south side of the structure. So it's going to be a combination of yes, the pathway and then utility work.
Okay. Would there be any way to move that bathhouse kind of to the left a little bit and save one or both of those trees by moving everything to the left?
I doubt it, because as we shift it more to the left, we're going to start to impact trees in that direction. So we're really, if you look at the area that was staked out during the site walk, it's kind of nestled in a little bit of an expanded gravel area at the start there. So that's the area of least disturbance. We actually went through probably 4 iterations at this point of the location of the bathhouse. It was further back. It was actually on the other side of the fence towards the reservoir. We looked at grading, and this is the least impactful and kind of best suited location.
I've got some follow-up questions. So how wide is that path that goes below the bathhouse as we look at the plan?
5 feet.
So right now there's a maintenance gate that gives vehicular access, it looks like, to the beach. So, and it looks like this proposed bathhouse would block that off. I also know that there's at least I realize that this project does not involve the demolition of the existing structure that's out there, but we did discuss that we may opt to demolish that at some point in the future. So I guess I'm a little concerned that the location of this bathhouse makes it very difficult to demolish that structure, because there's no access road to get in or out. So with the maintenance, I did see that double gate. Is there a need to get maintenance equipment in and out on the beach? And then also, has you or anyone from the town given thought to the need of basically a vehicular route along this area?
Yep.
if not
So,
now, potentially in the future.
Yeah, understood. So yes, all of these questions are raised kind of at the beginning of the project when we were looking at different scenarios in the specific location. And again, we had originally started off kind of behind the fence on the reservoir side, and then slowly started shifting it back. And we looked at things like access for vehicles and whatnot. And it was determined that this isn't going to restrict, I mean, physically it would restrict a vehicle from driving onto the beach, but for something like dismantling the existing building, they got to work around the proposed location. Nobody saw this as a deal breaker. This is the ideal spot. One thing about the demolition of that existing building, you know, should that commence, obviously that's going to fall under conservation jurisdiction. So a demo plan would be developed, and you would see the details and nuances of how that thing is taken apart and removed.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be a little difficult without some sort of, you know, access road or haul road. What about is there a need for a double gate, a maintenance gate?
Not to my knowledge, no. I mean, if there was, you could certainly introduce a new one kind of as you're heading towards the dam, like hooking right, so it's not impeding the entirety of the gravel path.
Yeah, I guess just from my, you know, read of the plan, and I can certainly appreciate, I don't know the other schemes that you guys had and kind of the issues and constraints with those others, but we're taking down an awful lot of trees here. And I'm not comfortable right now with the amount of disturbance here. So we've got disturbance due to the bathhouse location, to utilities. Your proposed canopy is in the footprint of the existing tree within the beach. And then the stormwater system, I think I must have misunderstood you on the site walk. My understanding was that it was located so we wouldn't be removing trees. And I see there are actually quite a few in that area that are slated to be removed. But I guess, and you know, part of the difficulty may be it's just there's a lot going on in this plan, and it's just very difficult to understand where the fence is, where the path is, which trees are coming out. Some of the trees that are coming out, I couldn't read how large the trees are.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. Starting with the canopy, that tree is not proposed to be taken down. The one that sits kind of straddling or just inside of the fence, the canopy is basically right in front of it, and it's going to be situated such that the existing tree is not going to be come down. We've earmarked a total of 5 trees, that were in the area of the stormwater management behind the existing shed, all of the proposed bathhouse location. All of those trees fall outside the 100-foot buffer to the reservoir, and those are going to be kind of required to be able to get in there and construct this. If the commission wanted to condition, you know, those trees, we could certainly revisit their cutting down, and if we can save them, we certainly can. It's just that based on what we've shown, construction practices to get the foundation in and the pipes and the utilities, those are slated to be removed.
All right, so maybe we can take it just kind of piece by piece, because I certainly appreciate this is a pretty big project. I certainly can understand that some trees very well may need to come down for this work. I'm not looking to eliminate, you know, the removal of all trees, but just for that canopy. So the canopy footprint does seem to be overlap the trunk of the tree. And then the grading also shows, I think, you know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet of cut within the drip line of the tree. So it just doesn't look like that's a tree that is meant to be saved based on the improvements there.
Understood. And what we can do is we can certainly shift on the plan view those couple contours in that canopy to pull it away from that tree, the existing tree.
Well, but I think it's also related to the mats, right? So the mats were sort of driving a lot of the grading here. So your layout of the mats are requiring cutting within the drip line of the tree.
so it's the tree itself is kind of at the left-hand corner of that canopy. So if we shift the canopy closer to the waterway, we would be creating separation there. So we can
Right.
certainly look at that.
Yeah,
and
but I think
adjust
the grading of the path and the cutting that's required also appears to be a significant issue there.
And we can look at all of that and adjust it. I have every confidence that we can get the canopy and save the tree.
Okay. So then with the stormwater system, can we zoom out a little bit? And then pan to the right where the parking, the proposed, not proposed parking, but potential future parking is shown on the plans. Would it be possible to relocate the infiltration chambers to that area where the parking might go in the future? Because then the storm line, all these utility lines, I think my preference would be for them to stay within this kind of wide pathway corridor. So is it possible to locate, it looks like, you know, elevation wise, it's pretty comparable to where you have it. Could we locate it over in that area? Because it looks like there would be, I think there's only one small tree that would be disturbed, you know, in that area. Is that something you took a look at?
Absolutely. So in revising for what we just talked about, we will certainly look at that as well.
Okay. Then for the water line, I noticed that we've got a new water line to the existing building that's out there. Is that because it needs a new water line, or is that because the proposed bathhouse was gonna interrupt that?
So we're not entirely sure what that water line looks like. We have it kind of sketched on there. So it's our understanding that we're gonna tap into water service at the manhole, and
Yep.
then we're gonna tie into the existing water service wherever we can cut it. So we're showing it kind of that happening schematically, but whether it happens next to the existing building or much closer to the proposed bathhouse, we're not going to know until we dig.
So I'm also concerned about that because the water lines, you know, as you know, need to be deep. So that's going to be some pretty significant trenching. So I was wondering if the bathhouse, you know, and I didn't know before tonight that you guys had looked at multiple different, you know, layout alternatives, but it just seemed to me this is a very unusual situation, right? We don't typically deal with this type of a site. So ordinarily, we would want the structures to be as far away from the resource area as possible. However, this resource area is a public swimming beach. It's not the typical kind of resource area we have. So pushing that building right up to the 50-foot line, and frankly, in my opinion, I think I could be convinced to even push it further, you know, so it's even closer to that resource line. If that means that we can keep trees, if we can minimize, you know, bringing a new water line to that building that might be demolished at some point in the not too distant future. You know, I view this as a very different type of project than what we typically see. And think, you know, basically there's a high level of disturbance on this beach all the time. So locating the building, you know, 20 feet, 25 feet closer to the water, I don't think is gonna be any more impactful to the resource area than the location you're showing it now. And it looks like it might make things a lot easier from a construction standpoint if we don't have to redo existing water lines to existing buildings. I don't know the implications on the accessible route to the beach, but you know, that's something that could be looked at.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. So if you look at the beach right now, you've got about 5 to 6 feet of topography, right? Elevation change from that gravel path down to the waterway. So if we take the proposed bathhouse from its current location, which is relatively flat because it's in the graveled area, and shift it to the beach proper, we're now having 3+ feet of elevation from the front of the house to the back of that, front of the bathhouse to the back of the bathhouse. So then carrying that grade change down to the water and then providing the accessible route, it just didn't work, which is why we took a step back to figure out a more suitable location that still meets the intent and goal of the bathhouse to service beachgoers. So what I can do to hopefully assuage your concern is take a harder look at those utilities and see if we can't tighten up those limits of disturbance, of trenching, to be able to save as much as possible. And we'll look at the location and how they're running south around the building and see if that is in fact the best fit.
Did you look at a more diagonal alignment for those mats going to the water? Would that, you could get a longer run? Does it need to, at the very end, it might need to kind of enter the water more perpendicular to the water line, but can you work with the existing contours by going diagonally and get it, under 5, or do it in a way where, there's less need to massage those contours? And maybe you even have like a path with a handrail next to the boathouse to, drop a foot or so, or, whatever, I don't know. I just, I think you get, my concerns, but I can certainly appreciate that there are lots of moving parts and you change one thing and it impacts, others. Any of the other commissioners have any comments? Alex?
Yeah, this is a question, and as I'm thinking about all this, and I'm sure you talked to it, but where do emergency vehicles get in to the area?
That was my question too, just to piggyback on that.
So they would come from the school down the gravel path.
From the
and
school,
they would be
okay.
Bathhouse, yep.
Okay,
There's like a physical cart path goes from the school parking lot up
Yep.
to Reservoir.
yep. Okay, and I'm sorry if I missed this. I was sorry I was unable to get to the site visit. I was out of town, but is there a plan for an eventual removal of the old bathhouse?
It's up in the air. DPW doesn't know or doesn't have the funding to fully understand what's happening to the existing brick building right now. I believe there were pumps and aerators that are located in there that they're looking to maintain for the time being.
Okay,
But it's not being proposed to be demolished as a part of this application. But the thought is they're still trying to decide what to do.
okay. Thank you.
Mike Cronin, I see your hands up.
Good evening, everyone. So let me see if I can help out here a little bit, Kevin. We looked at this for about the last 2 years, and Melissa's on the call here someplace. It might even be 3. So let's go back. We had this whole bathhouse inside the fence in that back corner, and we really wanted it to be there because it made the most sense for it to be inside there. We didn't have to change a whole lot of the fencing. We didn't have to change a lot of the pathways. Your argument about relocating that was spot on. We couldn't do it. So we had an accessibility challenge. The building sat up too high on one end and too low on the other end, and we couldn't make it an accessible pathway around the building. So we started pushing it back into that corner, and we moved it left, we moved it right. And this was the one spot where we found we did the least amount of damage to all the different components, plus allowed the accessibility piece to happen. Let me talk a little bit about the tree that you're concerned about inside the fence. We're not touching that tree no matter what. If we have to move that covered structure a little more to the right, a little bit closer to the water, we will do that. We're not
Sure.
interested in damaging that tree one bit. On paper, it looks like one thing. In the field, we'll locate it in the field accordingly so that it doesn't impact the tree. That's not a question. We talked about that the day we were there that afternoon last week. I love your idea about potentially moving the system underneath the parking system, the new parking spots that we're locating on the right side as you enter up from the bridge. That's a great idea. I talked to, I'm texting right now on the side. I think looking into that solution is a pretty good one. We'll take a look at that as early as tomorrow. I think that's a really good solution. It also eliminates the ability of touching any of those smaller trees that are down there. So we appreciate that feedback. We're not interested in cutting down a whole bunch of trees, not in that area. Doesn't look good for anybody. The last thing we want to do is start going in there with a chainsaw and upsetting folks. We understand what that environment is for. We understand that it's a pristine wooded area. We're going to keep it that way to the best of our abilities, while still being able to maintain the structure and the place and provide emergency access. The ambulances come up that driveway, they will stay in the same spot that they do today. The only other question I think I heard you talk about, Kevin, was the demo of the existing building. So that is up in the air as to the plans for that. Right now, it will be used as storage. We will be able to get pickup trucks around the corner, maybe not big vehicles. That's all we'll need for it. It's a cinder block construction. Even if we had to like take a four-wheeler with a little trailer behind it, the demo of that building might take an extra day or so, will not be a problem without needing big equipment over there whatsoever.
Okay, yeah, so I hear you that the grading of that route down to the water is really one of the major constraints you've got. Okay, understood.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Okay, any other comments from the commissioners? Do we have anybody with their hands raised from the public, Karen? No? Okay. So Mr. Goudreau, I'm assuming you'd like to request a continuance to the next hearing. When is the next hearing? It's August 8th. So you can take a look at the stormwater and maybe some of these other items. Is that your preference? Okay. Can I get a motion for that, please?
This is Jason, so moved.
Alex, second.
Okay. Take a vote. Sorry. Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
All right, the next item on the list is a request for determination of applicability for 55 Hill Street, the Lexington Golf Club. Applicant is the Lexington Golf Club, care of Mike Keegan, president. This is for raising and reconstruction of the existing clubhouse and associated parking lot improvements, including bringing the parking into conformance with current ADA and MAB improvements requirements, as well as the project will provide new sewer and water service to the proposed structure and the incorporation of a closed drainage system.
Yes, good evening, members of the Conservation Commission. For the record, Tim Williams with Allen & Major Associates, and I think Mike Keegan dropped off the call. He may have had a conflict. So with that being said, do I have the ability to share my screen?
If you don't, you should have it shortly.
Okay. Here
Are the
we go.
materials that you're showing tonight one that have already been uploaded for the record?
Well, it's just an aerial and the rest of the plans, and there's snippets out of the drainage report.
Okay.
So you have all that information. So again, the proposed project is the raising of the existing golf club, which is located right here, 55 Hill Street, and the reconstruction of the existing parking lot. And the only reason that we're reconstructing the existing parking lot is because they're proposing an ADA accessible route into the building via an elevator. So the proposed parking spaces need to be designed to the ADA standards, which is a 2% cross slope. So subsequently, this is an aerial image off of your GIS system. And the closest wetland resource area is down here in the corner, right behind the residence of Milk Street, and further down the hill on Hill Street, right in the location of the tee box for the 6th hole. And based on distances I took off of Google Earth, it's about 300 feet away. So we're not in any of the direct buffers to any wetland resource areas. So I'll skip past the existing conditions because I was able to display that on the aerial. And essentially what we're doing is, again, they're going to raise the existing golf clubhouse and construct it on the existing foundation. And then they're going to add about a 500 square foot addition onto the clubhouse, which will contain a set of stairs and an elevator. And as a result, again, the ADA accessibility parking spots need to conform to the cross slopes. So we have to kind of pick up this edge of the parking lot. And what we propose to do is full depth reconstruction through the parking lot. It's at the end of its useful life. And then restripe the parking lot back to what's required under the zoning bylaws as far as drive aisle widths and parking stall spacing. And we went through the design review, and it was requested that we incorporate a loading area up in front. And so we're also maintaining the existing curb cuts that are out there today. So outside of those, that's really the only improvements that are being taken place on the site. Let me scroll down here. So again, these parking spaces need to be regraded. We're going to hold the existing grades of the parking lot as best we can to avoid disturbance. We'll curb the whole, put new bituminous curbing around the parking lot, but we're going to have to incorporate an underground infiltration system. So currently on the existing clubhouse, it's collected by roof leaders, and I've heard varying reports. I've talked to the greenskeeper. I've talked to some old time members. They're not really quite sure where those roof leaders go. I've heard that they are collected and they run out behind between the first hole and the sixth green. So we're going to collect all that roof leader as well. The parking lot spills off into a spillway at the end of the parking lot into an area drain. That area drain in turn, 50 feet away, daylights kind of further down Hill Street, all on golf course property. So what we're proposing to do is capture all the roof drainage. So there's about 16 roof leaders that are going to be coming down off the building. There's also an internal roof leader that we'll be capturing. We're going to collect all that. We're going to bring that down to an underground infiltration system. As well, with the regrading of the parking lot, we've incorporated 2 catch basins, one at each side. So we'll crown this parking lot and we'll capture the stormwater on each side and bring that back to an underground infiltration system. We've incorporated an overflow structure. So if this system does surcharge, it's going to tie back into that existing area drain that's at the end of the paved leak off. With the reconstruction of the clubhouse, we're going to need to add a grease trap. We're going to need to bring new sewer service in. We're going to need to bring a new water line in, new fire line, and the site's also going to have new electrical service brought in as well. Again, all that work is going to happen within existing paved surfaces and within existing developed areas. Now, we did do a stormwater report, which was submitted as part of the RDA. And we analyzed where water is actually running off the disturbed areas for this project. And we essentially have 3 study points. There's a small area up in front that runs off to Hill Street. The majority of the existing site runs out into the golf course itself. And then the study point number 3 will be the area that's captured in the closed drainage system. I mean, that's captured and sheet flows off of the little paved leak off at the end of the driveway. In the proposed condition, we looked at the same 3 study points, and we're actually capturing majority of the stormwater that's generated from the development and putting it back underground. So there's not only a peak reduction in rate of runoff at all 3 study points, but there's a substantial decrease in the volume that's being generated. And this is the summary that was essentially in the drainage report. So for study point 1, there's 0 reduction on the sheet flow out to Hill Street because that small little portion that runs out to Hill Street, we're really not touching. Study point 2, what flows off into the golf course under existing conditions, it's the roof leaders, it's portions of the areas in and around the clubhouse itself and a small portion of the parking lot, which we're now going to be capturing. So the sheet flow that runs off into the golf course is significantly reduced, as well the volume significantly reduced. Study point 3, which is the big one, which is where all the stormwater is going to go from this redevelopment. We've essentially, by incorporating that underground infiltration system, reduced the runoff to almost zero. That used to run off the paved leak off into that area drain. Outside of the 100-year storm, we've reduced it to nothing. So we're capturing every storm event and recharging it back into the ground. So that's really the program in a nutshell. Again, we're outside of any of the well and resource areas, but it was requested that we file a request for determination with the commission to get your guys' feelings on the project.
Karen, do we have an engineering review letter for this?
We do, and I'm just about to put it on the screen.
Thank you. So I'm seeing that it applies with our performance standards, but also says that the model, the type of soil should be changed. So I guess I'm a little confused. Are they signing off on this, or would that potentially change some results?
I tend to, this is the first time I've seen this, to be honest with you. So I really don't have a response to the soils. I believe I used the soil survey, and I indicated what soil types those were, and off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Obviously, there's no impervious surface being added to the project. We're happy to do confirmatory test pits. We're not able to do them right now because, again, the golf courses, we're in full season for the golf course. But I think the thought is that come September or October, when things slow down a little bit out there, and working with the potential contractor, we can dig those test pits, determine what the actual underground soils. We're at the top of the hill. I'm pretty sure the groundwater is down very deep. Again, the wetland resource area is further down the hill, significantly down near the 6T box. And we did submit an O&M plan, which the golf club is more than willing to participate in. So
Sure.
I'd have to go back to my stormwater report as how the stormwater was modeled. Regardless, by the fact that we're incorporating an infiltration system, we're reducing the rate of runoff and the volume in all storm events, regardless of what the soils are.
Sure.
Now, maybe they're asking us to model it as a D because it's all impervious surface.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like it's probably pretty minor.
Yeah.
Any comments from the commissioners? Holly?
Yeah, I wasn't able to go out there, but I was just curious about how far that spillway off the drive or the parking lot is from the resource area.
Oh, it's easily 300 feet away.
The spillway too.
Yeah. I mean, off the back side of that spillway is essentially the fairway to the sixth tee, the sixth hole.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so maybe out of an abundance of caution, I think maybe getting, just confirmation from the engineering department that we're fine with the stormwater modeling, but we could make that a condition. So can I get a motion for issuing a negative determination with conditions?
Alex, so moved.
Holly, second.
Okay, thank you. Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the next item in the agenda.
I think
Thank
you
you.
have to say yes, that you vote yes too, Kevin.
Oh, yes, and I vote yes. And I didn't ask if there were any public comments. I'm assuming there are not. No, okay, great. Okay. Next item on the agenda is for 22 Village Circle. Property owner Dinesh and Savitha Shantapa. Project is demolition of an existing deck and subsequent reconstruction of a new deck atop an existing concrete slab.
Good evening. My name is Mary Trudeau, and I'm representing the Shantapas this evening. Many of you will recall that there was an order of conditions issued for an addition to this existing single-family house at 22 Village Circle, probably about a year ago. And the work, as you probably noticed when you were at your site visit, is ongoing. At the time that we filed for the addition, there was no intent to change the existing deck at the back of the house. The deck sits on an approximately 10-foot by 30-foot concrete slab and is probably 10 feet off the ground. Since construction has begun, the homeowners realized that, one, the deck was not compliant with current building codes, and two, that it also was smaller than they would ideally like if they have to rebuild it. So we have submitted a request for an amendment to the order of conditions that would allow them to demolish the existing deck and build a compliant deck on top of the existing concrete slab. The deck has been designed to incorporate helical supports, which allow for minimal disturbance of the ground and would require minor saw cutting into the existing concrete pad to allow for contact with the actual substrate beneath the concrete pad. There would be no additional impervious surface on the site. Arguably, there might be something less because for each of the helical supports, we would require an 18-inch by 18-inch cut, and the supports are approximately 6 inches by 6 inches. So there would be a small amount of area that would technically be permeable as a result of this work, but it's truly insignificant. The erosion controls are currently in place on this site and would not need to be relocated for the work on the deck to proceed. They consist of a 12-inch Filtrex tube, and they were in very good condition the last time I saw them several weeks ago. If there are questions from the commission, I would be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mary. So you said that the cuts in that concrete slab will be 18 inches by 18 inches, and then after the helical piles go in, they'll be backfilled with stone or some sort of permeable material?
I would assume that it would be washed stone,
Washed
that
stone.
would be what you would put into that.
Okay, so I did not see that. I mean, that all sounds fine to me. We can see what the other commissioners think, but maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I didn't see anything that specifically talked about the size of the cuts in the slab or what would go back. So if we were to condition it as you described it, 18 inches square with washed stone, would that be acceptable to you?
Yes, I believe that the dimension is given in my text, but not
Okay.
shown on the plan. So
Okay,
yes, we
fair
would be
enough.
perfectly amenable to that.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Nope. Okay. Then can I get a motion to approve the amendment as described? Oh, yep, Karen.
In this case, you just have to close the hearing
Oh,
because.
just close the hearing. Okay. All right. And I assume there are no comments either. Does anybody have their hand raised in the audience? Okay. Do I need a motion to close the hearing then? Okay. Can I get a motion to close the hearing, please?
So moved, Alex.
Can I get a second?
Alex, second.
Thank you. Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is 42 Winthrop Road. Applicant is Shigemi and Mazazumi Nagai. Project is to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling within the 200 riverfront area.
Hello, thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Molly Obendorf. I work with Stamsky McNary. I'm representing Shigemi and Masa Nagai, the applicants and homeowners of the property located at 42 Winthrop Road. And as Mr. Chair, you stated, the project is to raise the existing dwelling. Karen, would I be able to share my screen? Thank you. To raise the existing dwelling and reconstruct a new dwelling in a similar location on the property. Let me share my screen real quick. Can run through everything here. I quickly highlighted the outline of the existing house. So the purple line there is the existing dwelling, and then the proposed dwelling is very simply in this area here. So it is a smaller footprint right here. So smaller footprint, and the homeowners would like to utilize the existing driveway. There will be a minor expansion due to the existing garage being a one-car garage and that being increased to a two-car garage. So there is a modest driveway expansion in the front. And then we are providing stormwater in the back. There will be virtually no clearing. Both the house and the dry well were located in an area where there would be open enough where there would be no vegetation clearing required. And the homeowners also want to have a low maintenance yard, so they are very accepting of the existing vegetation, and they want to keep as much as they can there. So we did initially get some comments back. Karen was kind enough to provide some comments last week, and we also did get an engineering review letter today. So I can run through those. Some of them were overlapping, some of them are similar comments. One of which was about being a soil evaluator and performing the test pits. So I will just provide more information on that. I am a certified soil evaluator and I perform the test pits. So I will be able to provide that information. Karen was also looking for, as well as engineering, some more information on, for example, the top elevation of the test pits and the specific estimated seasonal high groundwater in each individual test pit. So that information can be provided on the plan. There was also a question of, so there was estimated seasonal high groundwater found a bit higher in this test pit than in this test pit. Since we are 30 feet away from this test pit, the information for this test pit was used to set the elevation of the infiltration bed. And let's see, there was also a concern, a reasonable concern about the elevation of the basement floor, currently set at 203, and raising that up to be 2 feet above estimated seasonal high groundwater. That was also a comment that we got from, I believe it was part of the zoning review. So I will work with the architect to, figure out, based on the height restrictions as well, figure out what basement floor elevation we can hold. If we are unable to hold that 2 feet above groundwater, then we will provide, a sump pump and a discharge location. And the discharge will have some sort of subsurface structure to infiltrate the groundwater being intercepted from that. And moving on, there was some confusion about the utilization of the existing driveway, whether that would be removed and therefore not counted in the impervious area calcs for the existing conditions. So the existing driveway will remain. If anything, they'll do a thin coating of asphalt over it to smooth over any ruts or anything like that, and to blend with the existing, or for the proposed pavement extension. And if we raise the house and we need to revise the slope of the driveway to also raise the garage floor area, and we need to, modify the grades in this area enough where we would need to remove this driveway, then that will be accommodated in the stormwater calculations. That portion of the driveway that will have to be removed, or potentially will have to be removed, will not be included in the existing calculations as impervious surface, and rather open space, which is in compliance with the requirements. And there was also a little bit of confusion about what exactly is draining. So there's an infiltration trench along the driveway to mitigate the increased driveway in the front. And so the entire driveway is not being captured. It's not intended to that way, because the grades, this portion of the driveway is what's being captured and infiltrated in that trench. And this area itself is greater than the increase in impervious surface for the driveway expansion. So in this particular subcatchment that's going towards Winthrop Road, we are mitigating all of the storms, and the post-development runoff rate and volume are less than the existing runoff rate and volume. I'll go back to the plan and continue on. It was also brought up by both Karen and engineering whether or not the patio is impervious or pervious. It is proposed to be impervious, and those the area was included in the post-development calculations as impervious surface. So that has been accommodated in those calculations as such. And then there was, engineering didn't have an issue with this, but I think Karen's looking for a little more information. There is an overflow on the dry well. It's only overflowing the 100-year storm. So all other storms are being completely mitigated and maintained on site. And this is discharging a small amount of volume whenever there's a 100-year storm to a level spreader. And the point of the level spreader is to disperse the amount of runoff that is going, or the amount of overflow volume that's going to that level spreader, and disperse it so it's not a concentrated flow. Calculations for that were provided in the stormwater report and reviewed by engineering, and they didn't have a comment on that. And then there were a few more comments of just demarcating the limit of work. It is a bit unclear here. We do have erosion controls on the side of the resource area, which I'm not realizing I forgot to mention. It's mean annual high water line on the adjacent property at 44 Winthrop, and the property is fully within the 200-foot riverfront area. So hence why we are before the commission tonight to discuss this. So the limit of work will be demarcated by, both the filter mitt as well as orange construction fencing up gradient, where we don't need to worry about siltation and erosion control. And then demarcating so we're showing all the existing trees here and sizes. It doesn't look like they were determined what type of tree they are, so I can see if we can get that information. And the only trees being removed are 3 trees in front. There's a 10-inch, 12-inch, and 8-inch diameter tree that are proposed to be removed in front and are shown as such on the plan, but I will make that more clear with an X about those trees being removed. And I believe that covers both Karen's and engineering's comments that we did receive. So I am happy to answer any questions the commission has at this time regarding the project.
Thank you, Ms. Lippendorf. Do any of the commissioners have comments or questions? Holly?
Yeah, we noticed a significant populations of some invasive plants on this property. I don't know if this is within our jurisdiction to request some management of Japanese knotweed particularly. And I don't remember what else was there. But it would be, I think it would be to the homeowner's benefit if those populations were removed.
All right.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
I think one important point is going to be that sump pump, if a sump pump is needed and where that's going to discharge. So I definitely don't think we can approve anything until we know where that goes.
Yep, we totally understand. And ideally, I think what we would do is expand the dry well and back to accommodate, that groundwater that is being intercepted. And that also avoids any additional vegetation clearing. So it keeps it in that one spot, in that open area to avoid having to clear any trees. But we will definitely go back and figure that out and then go before the commission again to discuss what we have figured out.
Okay. Then I understood what you were saying about the overflow and the level spreader but I think we've got that standard detail, the downspout detail, where we really like that point of failure, probably won't fail. Hopefully it won't fail, but if it does, we like that failure point to be really obvious. So rather than being kind of tucked in the backyard near the property line, I think we'd like that overflow to happen, at the downspout. So then the homeowner has kind of a clear indication that there's something going on. And then hopefully they'll be in a better position to do something about it.
Okay, so completely get rid of the level spreader and show.
Yeah, and no emergency outlet. So we'd like the emergency outlet to be at those downspouts.
Downspouts. Okay.
And then, I realize that these plans are a lot of times sort of diagrammatic in nature, but you've got one connection point going from the corner of the house to the infiltration system. Is that how you imagine the downspouts all around the house will tie into it, or will we have kind of multiple points of contact?
No, so that has been laid out, and I can try to.
Oh, I see. Oh, is there a trench that goes around the?
Yeah. So it
Okay,
goes from the front to
Got
the
it.
back, and then they all connect into one point. So there's one
Okay,
connection point, but they are all connected underground. And slopes have been provided on those downspouts and inverts at the downspouts as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any hands raised from members of the audience? One? No. Okay.
No one's hand is raised.
Okay. Yeah, Karen, did you have something you wanted to say?
So my question just has to do with what is the estimated seasonal high groundwater level you would use for the basement, because you have two different elevations.
Yeah, since test pit 2, I think Karen, you did mention that estimated seasonal high groundwater could be as high as elevation 205 based on this test pit 2. So if we were to provide that 2 foot offset, it would be based on that 205 elevation. So
Okay.
the basement floor elevation would, and again, we have to look at this. There is some concern about the elevation difference that would then result in from the garage to the actual first finished floor elevation. So, we will look at that. That's, I think, the biggest issue that we need to revisit, and it would be the higher elevation. So the basement floor providing a 2 foot offset, I believe we would hold that higher elevation.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Obendorf, you've mentioned that there are, a few items that need to get addressed.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're gonna request a continuance. Do you know, is our next meeting is August 8th? Does that give you enough time?
Yeah, I'm just wondering when staff would like to see revised plans in order to be on the August 8th meeting. We definitely want to shoot for that. So
Yeah, Karen.
It would be the week Monday before, so August 1st.
okay.
Okay, so is that what you'd like to do?
Yes, I think we would, we'll shoot for the August 8th meeting, and getting revised plans in by the 1st.
Okay, so can I get a motion to continue the hearing to the August 8th meeting at the applicant's request?
Mrs. Holly, so moved.
Alex.
Jason, second.
Thank you. Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Great. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Next on our list is a request for determination of applicability for 26 Bedford Street. The applicant is Jia Zhenlu, and the project is to raise the height of the roof of a two-family dwelling within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands.
If my son speak more English than me, he speak to me, it's okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
So we want to raise the.
Just real briefly, could you identify yourself for the record, please?
I am Henry Liu, son of Jiazhen Liu.
Great, thank you very much. Okay,
Yeah.
please continue.
So we want to raise the back roof of our house. It's uneven. So towards the left side, it's leading down. And so we want to raise it by, remove the roof and then raise it by 16 inches. And that's the only change. We're not gonna like build anything else. It's just raising the roof.
Okay. And then do we have a plan for this, Karen?
Hold on, I was just trying to pull it up. We don't have a good plan, but there is a picture.
Okay.
So this roof area, if you recall.
Is this the kind of thing where it's important to identify a limit of work, or is that less of a concern for this? Sorry, I wasn't able to go out on the
Yeah,
site.
based on the site visit, I mean, we definitely need a limit of work and erosion controls. You can see there's some previous staining from concrete that was poured to fix a footing that was not properly controlled.
Okay. So Karen, are you comfortable if we make that a condition that they work with staff at a pre-construction meeting to identify that limit of
Sure.
work and any erosion control measures that are needed?
Sure. And then I know during the site visit, there was just some discussion about the site, existing site conditions and some operations that were taking place on the site. So I didn't know if the commission had any thoughts on that or.
Yeah, well, there were some gardens by the wetlands or in the wetlands, is that right?
Yes.
So my understanding is that the applicant was amenable to moving those gardens. Did I understand that correctly from the site visit? Holly?
I thought that he said that it wouldn't happen in future years. So there's a section of vines growing along the fence.
Yep.
And quite a lot of buildup of compost for those vines, because it's adjacent to a fence, adjacent to a wetland. The wetland on the other side of the fence. So the question is, do we need those taken out now, or can we say that they won't be done in any future years, and would that be all right?
You can put a condition if you're asking me, Holly. You can make that a condition. You could make it kind of a separate, just in kind of almost like a little enforcement action.
That in future years, there's no gardening on that along that fence.
Yes.
That would be fine with me.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Liu, did you understand that?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay. And that's acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other comments from the commissioners? Any hands raised? No? Okay. Can I get a motion for a negative determination with conditions as discussed?
This is
Mrs. Holly-
Jason, so moved.
Mrs. Holly, second.
Thank you. Alex,
Yes,
Jason,
Yes,
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu.
thank you.
And they should understand that a negative determination means that it's okay to go ahead with the work. Means that-
Negative is good in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we're going into the continued public meetings and hearings. So the next item on our agenda is a notice of intent for 20 Wood Park Circle. Applicant is Anil Padana and Kachana Bhatt. The project is to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands.
Good evening, commission members. Rich Kirby from LEC Environmental here. I think the commission probably remembers this project at this point. This is our third public hearing. At the last public hearing, the commission was contemplating whether or not they might condition some plan changes and things like that. And we said, nope, we'll request a continuance just to make sure all of the changes are on the plan. And so that's what we've done. Since the last hearing, Mike Novak, project engineer from Patriot Engineering, modified the plan in a couple of ways. The first way is the retaining wall off the back of the house, and specifically the section that is behind the proposed patio. We moved that back toward the patio by a couple of feet. So now the distance between the tree and the patio is 8.3 feet. We were a couple feet closer last time. So we pulled that retaining wall back. We also added a detail on the second sheet of the retaining wall, the block style wall. And we added a note to this plan indicating that a certified arborist would be involved if any tree roots greater than 2 inches had to be removed. The second thing that we did is revise the planting plan. Since the retaining wall shifted back, we were able to modify the restoration planting plan to make sure that the planting plan extends all the way to the retaining wall. We also added the pheno conservation markers at the base of the wall. And we modified the planting scheme such that the gray dogwood that had been proposed within the wetland is now within the buffer zone and replaced with other wetland plants. And of course, I reviewed the fact that, you know, these planting plans are generally schematic in nature. And once all the plants are delivered, we use the plan as a guide, but actually cite the plants where we think they'll actually, you know, do their best. So I think that covers all of the changes that we made, but happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Any comments or questions from the commission? Alex?
I just quickly want to say thank you for taking the time to work through this.
Sure. No, we realized it was a, you know, an aggressive project, frankly. But, you know, the homeowners really wanted to stay in the neighborhood and stay on their property. So instead of going to look for something else, they're looking to raise and rebuild in place. So I'm glad it worked out. It is a unique property with a unique set of circumstances. But I think with the mitigation effort proposed and the stormwater management, we have an improvement compared to what's out there now.
Holly, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I'm happy with the improvements. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I'll second or third that. Thank you. Okay. Can I get a motion to close the hearing?
Alex, so moved.
Jason, second.
Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes,
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
You too. Okay, the last item on our agenda for meetings and hearings is 48 Allen Street, notice of intent. And I see that the applicant has requested a continuance to the August 8th meeting. Can I get a motion for that?
Jason, so moved.
Alex, second,
Alex,
second, yes, yes.
Jason,
Yes, yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, let's go back to new business pending matters. I think the next thing we've got on our agenda are plan modifications and insignificant plan changes. First is for 17 Augustus Road. Karen, could you please speak to that?
Yes, they've actually asked for a continuance to August 8th.
Okay.
They're working through the setback issues through zoning.
Okay. So do we need to vote on that continuance or
No.
just be back at the, okay. And then 32 Fairbanks?
32 Fairbanks was just adding the small addition of patio in the back, or to connect into the approved addition with stairs coming down. And they did submit the details for it to be a pervious patio.
Okay, great. Everybody satisfied with that? Okay.
We need a motion on the other continuance.
You need a motion to approve the plan change for 32 Fairbanks.
Okay, can I get that motion, please?
Alex, so moved,
Holly, second.
Thank you. Alex,
yes.
Jason,
Yes,
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, and we've got a request to extend an order of conditions for 6 Peachtree Road. It's a 1-year extension to October 21st of next year. Anything to go over with that, Karen?
No, I'm just with COVID, they weren't able to fully execute their plan, so they're asking to extend it so they can complete it.
Sure, okay, makes sense. Can I get a motion for that extension?
Jason, so moved.
Alex,
Second.
Alex,
yes.
Jason,
Yes,
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, and then we've got a full certificate of compliance request for a couple of projects. The first is 44 Hartwell Avenue.
Yes, we had this on hoping we would get through the engineering comments, but there's still some comments to work through on the compensatory storage due to some minor grade changes, and then the addition of some sub drains beneath the new parking lots.
Okay, so maybe the next hearing we can get that.
Yes.
Okay, and then 39 Ledgelawn Avenue.
Yeah, 39 Ledgelawn just needs the full certificate. It is stabilized at this point. I think
Okay.
last time they got the partial, it wasn't quite stabilized, but it is now.
Okay, can I get a motion to issue the full certificate of compliance for 39 Ledgelawn?
Holly, so moved.
Alex, second,
Thank you. Alex,
yes.
Jason,
yes,
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. And then am I correct that the 20 Cook proposed corrective restoration plan that they've asked to postpone that? Yeah, okay. So then the next item on the agenda is to issue an order of conditions for 21 Crescent Road.
Sure. Yep, that should be all set. And I believe just want to make sure that the commissioners who had to watch the meetings, you just want to let everybody know that you submitted your affidavits as such.
Yes,
Yes.
that I did earlier.
Jason, yes, I did.
So that would be, I think, Alex, what meeting did you watch? Just,
The May 31st one.
And
And
then-
signed the Mullen form.
thank you. And then Kevin, did you have one?
I did. I don't remember
Yeah.
the date off the top of my head.
I can tell you if you want to hold on a second. And then Jason, you had one as well, I think.
Yeah, it was the May 31st hearing.
Okay, and
I think mine was the one following that.
Give me 1 second and I will open it up.
And this is Megan. While Karen pulls that up, we did revise the agenda shortly after it was posted. So there was one more certificate request for 16 Village. So we can circle back to that.
Right,
Okay.
I was gonna say that, we missed that.
I figured I'd just wait till the end.
All right, what was the address for that again, Megan?
That one is a full certificate request for 16 Village Circle.
Okay. So, and that one's in good shape, Karen?
And so for 21, for the 16 Village,
Yeah,
no, we need to talk about that. That's an old
Okay.
one from 2002. So
I
we
see.
we
Oh,
found the as-built from 2002, but if you go out today, there's actually been some changes that within the riverfront and possibly the wetlands. So it really needs an updated as-built plan. Looks like a patio area was installed.
okay.
Kevin, the meeting that you missed was June 13th. So,
Yes, and I did watch that meeting, the June 13th meeting.
and we have your affidavits from the three of you, so you can vote.
Okay. Can I get, so what do I need a motion for again? Can you?
Issue an order of conditions for
Issue the order.
21 Crescent
Okay.
with,
Yeah.
with
Issue
standard
the-
condition.
Okay, right. What Karen said.
Jason, so moved.
Alex, second.
Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes,
and I vote yes. Okay. Next on my agenda is to vote to ratify 2 emergency certificates for beaver trapping and dam breaching at Kiln Brook by the Pine Meadows and Compost Facility area and Simmons Brook, Ivan Street and Hadley Road area.
So I believe last year I brought the Ivan Street location to you where the problem was, and you issued emergency to put in a water flow device. There's a sewer line that runs along that area that is a hazard if water backs up and infiltrates into the sewer. So the emergency was to reduce the water levels, but see if we could allow the beavers to stay in the area and just make sure that the water level stayed low enough. However, they've continued to remain active, and it's looking like that water level is still causing an issue. So at this point, there's really no other solution but to trap the beavers and just breach the dam. So the Board of Health has issued their emergency certificate to do the trapping, and because there's dam breaching involved, the commission would also issue an emergency certificate. So that's Ivan Street, which is along the Simons Brook. It's on the commission's property as well as the Armory property. It's basically the stream straddles the property line.
Do we have 2 separate votes for these?
Yes.
Karen, was any research done into putting in like a beaver deceiver kind of thing?
That we did that actually.
You did that and
Actually,
it's
we
still
did that
happening?
last year. Yeah, and so in order for those to work, you really need a stream with an elevation that changes and a wide enough
Sure.
area that they can get at least a 3-foot depth ponding area. They need at least 3 feet in order to raise their young and stash food for the winter.
Sure.
So, so we tried it. We had the Beaver Solutions experts out, and they looked and they thought maybe we could get it to work, but after a year, it's not a good situation.
How
for
many
beavers.
beavers are out there? Do we know?
We don't know, so no idea.
it's too bad to have to do this. I hate to do this.
And it's just, we're so urbanized that it just really don't have the area. And the streams are so low gradient that if you back it up, it has a significant impact upstream.
And have we looked into what we need to do to prevent them from coming back? I mean, assuming we get them all out?
It's impossible. It's basically just keeping an eye, managing it. There's no way to keep them out. I mean, all our streams are connected,
Right.
pretty active in East Bedford on the Shawshene River.
Okay.
Issues. If you recall, you issued a permit to put in a water flow device over off of 91 Hartwell.
Right.
Rare
Yep.
lap.
Yep. Yeah. No, I had one in my little dinky little stream once. I'm sure it was moving on from being too crowded. Is it
So-
gonna cause a huge disaster if I abstain from voting in this? Is that gonna mess everything up?
Yeah, you need a quorum. You need a quorum.
A quorum. All right.
Sorry, Alex.
Yeah.
All right, so can I get a motion to ratify the emergency certificate, the dam breaching Kilnbrook?
Yeah, you're just breaching the dam. That's
Jason,
what
so
your
moved.
vote is for.
Oh, okay.
Holly second.
Alex,
Regretfully, yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly,
Also regretfully, yes.
I vote yes. And then for the emergency certificate at Simmons Brook. Can I get a motion to breach that dam?
Holly, so moved.
Jason, second.
Alex,
Yeah, again, regretfully, yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Lupa 90, request to host a turkey trot race at Whipple Hill on November 12th of this year, a Saturday. They're estimating approximately 120 people will be in attendance. Karen, can you give us a quick summary on that?
Yeah, this is the first time we've received this request for this location. As the note says that 120 people they expect to register. You have approved a race over through Bowman and Dumback, but that's a flatter area. And I'm not sure it's as many folks. But Ruth did forward her comments to me, just if she wasn't present, she just went on the record that she had concerns about the number of people because they're going to be doing multiple cycles through the paths there are already kind of in significant erosion and other things. So she just had some concerns with this proposal. Just the impact it would have on the conservation.
So this is a human race. It's not a race of turkeys. Is that right?
No, it's a Thanksgiving Day type thing. They call it a turkey trot. We have them in my town, but those are run along the roadway.
So this is on paths?
Yes. Yeah. Let me.
Have they done it there before? That location?
I don't recall that it's been. I think this is the first time we've had a turkey trot request.
Yeah, no, I feel like I've seen something about that sort of race, but it may not have been at that location.
You've allowed a race at Dumback Meadow
Right.
from Bowman, but it was just one cycle through.
Just
and
one
it's
loop.
part of a larger,
Yeah, no,
part of a larger.
I must have read about this particular race when it was in a different location, some other place.
What is Lupa 90?
Oh, Lupa 90 is our permit system. It's just the permit number, Lupa 90.
Okay.
Land use permit.
It's the way we
application?
keep track of it.
All right.
Instead of going by year, like all our other permits has the year in front of it. we didn't set it up, our loopers that way. I'm wondering if maybe we should. Here's the map if you would like to bring it up. It's basically just a race within.
So it's sort of a cross-country race. It's not, it's just on the regular trail.
Yes, it's
You're
on
not-
the red and it goes into Right Lock Farm. So is the starting point.
And they're expecting 120 people to be running, and or
Yes.
does that include spectators or something?
No, I believe it was how many runners they expect. I will bring up the looper right now with all the details. Estimated attendance 120.
Right. So I can see where this would be where Ruth would have had concerns, because if this is on trails and there are a lot of people running, it could have a negative impact on the trails. I don't know how other people feel, and I don't know the exact route that they're taking. So I'm a little hesitant. It's different than a road race.
I just don't know. I mean, how related are the two? I'm just not familiar enough with the trails at Whipple Hill, but you know, what's the equivalent of 120 people doing a couple of loops? Is that the equivalent of everybody else going to Whipple Hill for a year or 3 months? Or, you know, that gets a lot of traffic just independent of the race. So I'm just not sure how much this race is gonna, you know, change the issues out there. And just my sort of initial thought.
My reaction actually is that if they're finding troublesome spots, then maybe those could get taken care of.
Well, right, but I think we would probably need to take care of them. I don't think.
Well, I suppose there's that. But
They're in a
yes,
position to do that, but.
no.
Well, when you have that many people running, I mean, it's a different kind of use than just one person running and then someone walking behind them 7 minutes later.
Yeah, that's true.
There is some, I think there's, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm just coming from, you know, if we're gonna ask them to, you know, find a different location, I'd just like to feel pretty confident that's the right decision, rather than this sort of somewhat, not suggesting Ruth is being or anyone's being arbitrary, but I just wouldn't want them to, you know, ask them not to do this unless we were pretty confident that it was really going to have a significant negative impact.
Do you want a site visit to look at these trails?
I think that would be helpful.
I think it would be helpful. Yeah, I mean, that's a long walk, but maybe we have to do it on our own.
We can.
I mean, I've done, you know, some of this trail, and I know some of it's quite narrow and quite rocky and quite a lot of tree roots, but I don't know exactly which trails these are. So.
So we can postpone, you could postpone the vote, do a site visit to look at it in context of Ruth's comments.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm just thinking is, have we talked to the Right Lock Farm folks? Because it looks like that's where they're starting and finishing, right?
Yeah.
So they might have an opinion about.
That's not in Lexington.
Right.
And that's a lot of cars.
Yeah, I was just looking, and it looks like also that the 120 people won't necessarily all be running at the same time. It's this thing where you go.
Right.
And,
It's not a race?
correct.
Oh, what?
It's, well, yeah, it's a turkey
It's a
trot.
trot.
You can, it's a 5K course that they've laid out, and you can do it, there's 6 hours, and you can do it as many times as you want in that 6 hours.
And what do you do? Just time yourself or something?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how the timing works. That's not in their info, but.
So it isn't 120 people running a race as fast as they can on this one course.
Exactly.
Well, it could be, they just show up, so they could all just show up at 8.
Right.
So it's kind
Yeah, they usually give you a chip in your shoe that tracks when you finish,
Yeah.
when you start and stop.
It does say that packet pickup to 7 a.m., mandatory briefing at 7:45. So presumably everybody's there to start at 8. And they'll all be done by 2, but some might keep going and some might be done by 8:30 or 9. And you have to pre-register. There's no walk-up registration.
So they're already advertising this event?
This is the description of what they do. I suspect they do other events like this.
They have done events in town, Alex. So you have heard of TARC.
Okay, okay.
All right. So we can do a site visit with them and then decide if this is a good location for them or not. Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on?
My only other thought is after the site visit, could we come up with a cap and say, yes, you can do it, but only 100 people or something? If it looks like it's going to damage the trail.
Sure, they might like that better than just saying no.
Right. Or, yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll postpone that one till after the site visit. Speaking of site visits, need to schedule the site visits for the next meeting.
Yeah. And so you have 2 new applications. One is for 58 Ledge Lawn, which is a raise and rebuild in the riverfront. So you want to look at that one. The other one is 10 McGuire, and they're just proposing another concrete pad for a generator within the 100-foot buffer to floodplain. So I don't know if you want to look at that. You were just there not too long ago. And then there's a couple of land management items that we may want to set up that night. One being a site visit to the lower Weinberg Utica Street potential boardwalk project that's been hanging out there that goes through the vernal pool. I think Amber and I would like you to look at it to see if you would like us to look at whether it should be rerouted, whether to explore that or just keep it where it is before we go through more planning and permitting process.
Okay. So is that 3 total?
Yeah, and then there's the bird sanctuary, but I think someone mentioned they didn't know where it was. Maybe do a site visit there, but there's no trails there, so.
Oh, the Ada Govan Sanctuary?
Yeah, yeah. I think we've gotten requests whether, there's anything we should be doing to manage the property.
I was speaking with Amber about possibly planting some of the plants that are growing in the nursery now.
Yeah.
Here. And so we're looking at that.
Okay.
We're not going to do any planting immediately because it's just too hot and dry, but sometime in the fall, I have an exploding nursery. So there's no more room. So I have a whole bunch of plants ready to go once we get them in the ground.
I'm sure she shared our location that we thought would be a good one, right? At Parker Meadows, some of the areas that are outside the planting plan.
Yes, that too. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, if you want, we can add bird sanctuary. If you only have the 2, we can put that at the end if you want to stop over.
Sure.
Excellent.
I haven't been there. So are we talking about Tuesday at 5:30 or?
Is that work for you?
That's the 2nd.
Yep.
There's only 3.
Yep.
You want to start later? Kevin, you're always wanting to go later. It's easier.
No, actually, I tend to need to leave early. I can make the early ones, but not the later ones. So
okay.
earlier is actually a little better for me typically.
5:30. Okay.
I like to go later, but 5:30 is fine.
Oh, Jason, you're the person, okay,
Okay, so we'll start with 53 Ledge-Lawn then.
okay.
Sounds good. Minutes. I have not looked at the minutes. Has anyone looked at the 627 or 711?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
read both of them.
Okay.
And Ruth did also.
She did. Okay.
Obviously, she's not here, but so at least two of us have gone over them.
Okay. That sounds pretty good to me. Do we need to approve those one at a time, or can we do them as a batch?
I think it's one at a time.
One
I
at a time?
requested a batch once, but it didn't go through.
Didn't go over well. All right, no batching. All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from 6/27/22?
So
Holly,
moved.
so moved, or Holly second?
Alex,
Yes,
Jason,
Yes,
Holly,
Yes,
and I vote yes. And a motion to approve the 7/11/22 minutes.
so moved.
Holly second?
Alex,
Yes,
Jason,
yes,
Holly,
Yes,
I vote yes. Okay. Reports. There was one report that we talked about before, Karen, but I can't remember. There's something that we
Yeah.
wanted to do under reports.
Yeah, no, thank you. So similar to the last time, you issued comments regarding the comprehensive plan, chapter 5, open space and natural resources. So they also issued the housing one.
right.
And so it was suggested that the commission issue a comment letter regarding the land acquisition.
That's
And
what-
had a similar objective that was shared with the open space and the natural resources section regarding whether affordable housing should be considered when land acquisition for open space is planned. So I believe there was a recommended comment letter that the commission is asked to maybe consent to sending to the planning board regarding the housing.
Yeah, that Phil had drafted. Yeah, I read it and it looked good to me. How does everybody else feel?
I think there were some edits, right,
Yeah.
Alex? I think we got. that.
yes, I sent some edits, probably around 5:30 or 6.
Yeah, and I can pull that one up if you would like.
Okay.
I didn't see that yet.
Yeah, let me. put that up.
And it looks like the word that was in the letter that I haven't read the original piece. But the word require seems to be the key word that's under contention.
yeah, I read this well with the edits. The only comment I have is in like and such.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. We could just take that out altogether and just, where was it?
I just prefer or other use, but it's
Yeah. the
totally
only- I-
minor.
Other
Just-
uses, other municipal, let's see, but not require the same of other municipal property purchases.
Yeah, just remove and such, I think.
Awkward, yeah, but
Again, that's just nitpicking. The spirit of the letter is I'm in agreement with.
yeah.
I am too.
Okay, so do we want to approve the letter then as amended?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the letter as amended?
So
Holly,
moved.
so moved.
Alex, second.
Alex,
Yes,
Jason,
Yes,
Holly,
Yes,
and I vote yes. Okay. I think that does it for the agenda, right? Any other reports or issues anybody wants to raise before we adjourn? No, okay, hearing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn the hearing?
Holly, so moved.
Alex, second.
Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
yes.
Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Good
See you
night.
next Tuesday.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice job, Kevin.
Thank you.